Next is our panel, and it's about reconciling safety and sustainability, and that's going to be moderated by our friend, broadcaster and journalist, host of the BBC Travel Show. Please welcome Mr. Rajan Datta to the stage. Rajan, welcome. It's great to have you here.
How you doing?
Thank you so much. Very well, thank you. And we also welcome your experts, our panelists. And so I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Alastair Crossley. He's Global Head of Travel Solution AXA Partner. Yeah, come up to the stage right away for sure. Jane Thompson, Director Aviation Travel and Tourism at ICF. Welcome, Jane. Quim Martinez-Bosch, Vice President, Tourism Innovation Hub at MasterCard. And coming up, René de Monchy, Chief Executive, Tourism New Zealand, coming from far away. And finally, Dr. Saeed Al-Mashrafi is the Assistant Director General for Project and Tourism Product Development at the Ministry of Heritage and Tourism, the Sultanate of Oman. Welcome. Rajan, take it away.
Thank you, Willie. We haven't got nearly enough time to cover, such an amazing panel here, but I do think it's important to set the scene on this. We do live in an increasingly turbulent world where geopolitical conflict and climate change, amongst other factors, are now affecting our travel decisions as tourists and challenging various players in the industry. Meanwhile, customer surveys always show that safety and security far outweigh the likes of sustainability, which is regarded as a kind of nice to have. Now, of course, safety and security are vital to providing quality in tourism, and perhaps more than any other economic activity, the success or failure of a tourism destination depends on being able to provide a safe and secure environment for visitors. But why, and this is part of the question we're asking today, why are safety and security seen as being in competition with sustainability? Because after all, sustainable tourism focuses on minimizing negative impacts on the environment, on culture and local communities. And sustainable practices contribute to the long-term viability of destinations. So I would say then that risk falls into three main categories: for the traveler, for local communities, and for local, what you might call assets, the scenery, clean air, clean water, biodiversity, and so on. But do tourists really grasp this? Do they grasp this? Do we keep them informed well enough? Because while resilience is increasingly recognized as a vital weapon against unpredictable forces of nature and man-made, it is usually man-made, danger zones, are we really doing enough to mitigate risk? And that is why I am joined by this very distinguished panel of travel experts representing different parts of the industry, and I am going to press them to come up with examples of solutions and risk mitigating ideas from their own experience. There is an opportunity for Q&A if you would like to ask questions. We're going to use Slido. I can see it up here, or you can always do the old-fashioned thing and raise your hand. But that's towards the end. Let's start with you, Alastair, because from a global insurer's perspective, and I think AXA is the biggest travel insurance company, is it right?
It's one of the top three, yes.
One of the top three, okay. How has the array of different risks expanded in recent years? Just take me through that and what we're facing at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Rajan. I mean, if we look at the last 4 years, 3 out of 4 of them, we've been talking about one thing only, and that's a health risk, and thankfully a diminishing health risk. But we're now starting to see risk coming through in new areas that perhaps had existed before, but certainly at a very low level. So if you speak to consumers now and travelers now, the number one risk that they're fearful of in 2024 is cybersecurity. 44% of them feel that they will be at risk of attack when they are traveling. And yet, 70% of them will engage in at least one high-risk activity, like public Wi-Fi or charging a mobile phone in a public place. So there's very much this balance, this playoff between convenience and then security as well, and that's certainly a risk that we need to address. When you look at the world stage now, in terms of another risk, it's a busy time. Geopolitical issues are on all of the news channels, not just the BBC, all news channels. And that certainly has, from a risk perspective, has a very direct impact for insurers, because if you've got travelers, if you've got business travelers in a country that is suffering some difficulty, then you've got to get them out, and you've got to get them safe. But then you need to think to the future, how do you construct yourself so that once peace has been re-established, that you can get back in there and you can provide safety and security for those travelers as they want to revisit those locations. The big one, climate change, is something that we've been talking about as risk carriers for a number of years. Insurable risk due to climate change accounted for $90 billion in 2023. We saw record thunderstorms in the US and in Europe. We saw wildfires in Greece and in Hawaii. We saw huge storms, typhoons in Mexico and in the Philippines. And these have a huge impact in terms of the ultimate risk in terms of, from an insurer's perspective, in terms of where they need to pay out. And we need to address that. We need to understand what we're doing from a climate change perspective. And then on top of that, you have the natural disasters as well. So the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria and in Morocco as well all have an impact in terms of the emerging risks that we see. And then I think lastly, before I move on to some of the other panelists, the last one is the societal impact, or the over-tourism piece, as we talk about. The pressure that puts on natural resources, scarcity of water, for example, and we start to see destinations trying to address that. So Venice has already introduced a tourist tax, a daily rate for tourism to try and balance the volume of tourists on any particular given day, and I believe Bali is about to introduce something very similar as well. That one is going to be reinvested into sustainable projects to try and improve the environmental impact that tourists are having. So those are the risks that are starting to become more and more prevalent now that we come out of a sort of post-pandemic era.
Now, obviously, I'm going to move on to asking, as we go along, why those risks and sustainability, well, risks and sustainability are seen in conflict. But actually, let me turn to you, Jane, because you've actually got, I think, a very good example of that very, very point, really. Because from a consulting point of view, do you see there is a conflict between the two?
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to use an example of waste management as a classic area where there is a real conflict between safety and sustainability risk from our perspective. We see this both in the air and on the ground. We do a lot in aviation as well. And in the air, we're starting to see a lot of our airline clients coming to us and asking for help to manage cabin waste. So from a sustainability risk perspective, there are Cat 1 regulations, aviation waste regulations, so-called, and they require the majority of offloaded cabin waste to be incinerated at destination. From a safety risk perspective, they exist for a good reason. That's to prevent contamination from animal byproducts. But arguably, they're excessive, these regulations, and prevent most international catering waste from being recycled. So, yes, the regulations need to be modernized and updated, but it's very, very hard to affect regulatory change. And IATA has tried very, very hard. I know they have been tackling this for at least the last decade, and it's a bit like pushing water uphill. So it's important to recognize that when we're advising our clients, you start where you can make change happen. And that is by reducing the overall quantity of waste and finding more sustainable alternatives. And we're starting to see carriers and airports starting to pay attention to this, and they're starting to be quite creative about it. They're starting to run trials, and this is really good. This enables them to do things like review cabin product to incorporate new and alternative materials, put in place better processes, and all of that reduces the amount that goes to incineration. I was made aware last week of a trial that the UK's Bristol Airport ran with EasyJet over the last 6 months, which has highlighted just how hard this is, but at least it's a start, and it's all about making a start. Destinations, too, can be agents of change, and there are regions where regulation is less stringent. The Middle East is an example, and that provides an opportunity for airports and carriers in that region to be the ones who try new and innovative things. Delhi, for example, has a ban on plastic cups. That means that not only airline carriers, but also cruise ships actually have to be more innovative, and they have to replace plastic cups with paper cups on all inbound flights and cruises into the region. And then if we look on the ground at destination level, COVID safety protocols, we will all recall, not fondly, massively increased at the requirement in hotels to increase the use of single-use plastic and food wrappings. And that resulted in a huge increase in the quantity of waste and the pressure, therefore, on local waste infrastructure, so much going to landfill. And that's harmful to local ecology, and that's your sustainability risk. And of course, you get increased likelihood of disease, both to tourists and local communities, which represents your safety risk. That threatens the long-term viability of a destination. Visitors don't return to dirty places. And an example here, many of you will be aware of the man-made large 124-acre waste dump island in the Maldives, which exists because the local waste infrastructure just isn't insufficient to deal with the output from the hotel accommodation. But these are protocols and not legal requirements, which are actually easier to challenge. So for destination leaders, they can be, again, agents of change, apply common sense, and I'll keep coming back to this theme. Common sense is important here when you're balancing these risks. And I'll use one example before I hand over, which is Ras Al Khaimah, which has put in place in the last couple of years, post-COVID, a zero food waste initiative in all of its hotels. It's introduced orca devices. And these collect food waste and convert them into fertilizer, which is then distributed to local farmers. So it's innovation and creativity in action. So again, the key theme is being agents of change. That's what we try and do for our clients.
And you do travel a lot, you have lots of clients. Are you seeing those kind of new ideas being implemented more and more?
Oh, absolutely, yes. This is a real theme. And it starts small. It doesn't, and one of my favorite phrases, you can't eat the whole elephant all at once. You have to start small. So small changes make a big difference. Legacy contracts, really important for any of you who are thinking, well, how can I make a difference? Look at your legacy contracts. Just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it always has to be done the same way. Be brave.
Thank you. Talking of innovation, which you mentioned, MasterCard, Kim, launched the Travel Innovation Hub a couple of years ago. Can you give some examples of how risks that you've been addressing have evolved and how you've come up with solutions to do that, to sort that situation out?
Thanks, Raj and the Council, for the opportunity of being here. Yeah, in MasterCard we have been working with travel and tourism industries since several years ago, but 2 years ago we decided to go a step further and we created the Tourism Innovation Hub, which is an initiative that is working together with tourist destinations to develop tourism in a more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient way. And we are doing that leveraging our capabilities, our insights, our data. Just for your info, last year we managed around 143 billion of transactions during the year. So always, of course, in an anonymized and aggregated way, so don't worry. I mean, we are making you safe and resilient also. But this gives us a good overview and insights about what's happening in the tourism industry, how the markets are behaving, how we were recovering 2-3 years ago. No? And we are doing several projects with tourist destinations to support them being more resilient, to optimize their planning, to make their strategy to be more resilient, more sustainable. Okay? We understand when we talk about sustainability, and I'm glad that Sorija present before the NAS because, well, we are one of the partners supporting the symposium and the methodology. And every time that we talk about sustainability, we believe in the three pillars: environmental, social, and economic, because we understand that, well, all of them, and you explain, are really important. But as much positive is tourism, the impact of tourism, we consider that the destination will be more resilient. The industry will be more resilient, okay? So for us, economic impact and social impact is also super important. And we are doing several, and I'm getting back to your question, sorry for a little introduction. But for example, in the last year, and we made several projects, but one of them is, we announced yesterday with Malaga City.
Malaga City, yep, go on. With
Malaga City
yes,
is
yep.
one of the top destinations in tourism in Europe, in the south of Spain, Andalusia. And we are testing, we are learning, it's an innovative collaborative project. We are testing ChatGPT, which is working in a private environment, only trusted data from us and the city council, okay? But it's a ChatGPT not for the traveler, for planning 3 days planning. It's a ChatGPT for SMEs, to provide them answers to all the questions they want, to make them more competitive, to optimize their planning, to optimize their operations, okay? And it's a way that we hope we will be able to make the sector more competitive. Another example, last December, and this is already live and you can already buy, we launched a platform for Costa Rica, together with the government, the National Bank, and Postal Services, for 300 artisans. And now, thanks to this platform, it's a marketplace, they can distribute. You can buy local artisan products, and Postal Service of Costa Rica delivers to the hotel, in the airport in San Jose, or at your home, wherever you want. And these artisans, we were talking with them, and they were explaining, wow, it was like a hobby. We were doing that in our free time. But thanks to this, at the end, it's like an Amazon for the artisans, for tourists. And thanks to that, they are becoming entrepreneurs. They are becoming SMEs. So it's the kind of innovative, crazy projects that we are doing for improving the impact of tourism, but at the same time, making them more resilient and more competitive.
Are you seeing this conflict that I was just talking to Jane about between people wary of risk but also the issue of sustainability? Are they in competition ever? Are you ever seeing that?
I don't think so. I mean, as you said at the beginning, I think that people is conscious and are learning that and I think that we see it more and more after the pandemics. Before the pandemic, everyone wants to grow, and growth was the main KPI. But now people understand that we cannot grow at any price. We want to grow and be more sustainable and resilient, because you cannot be the leading destination this year and putting in risk your resources, your people, your talent, your community. You cannot burn your SMEs. You cannot burn the citizens. We are seeing cities which more and more conflicts between the citizens and the tourists. And I think that all destinations are aware of that and are working in advance to anticipate this kind of risk and make sure that they are a sustainability destination. And I think it's good news.
Well, let's turn to two of the panel who are dealing with destinations. Renee, New Zealand. Now, that is a mecca for nature lovers and culture lovers. Tell us about your perspective and how you perceive risks and how you manage and mitigate risks.
Yeah, thank you. It looks great to be here. Great to be here at ITB. And maybe follow on from the previous conversation. I mean, social license is also a risk in New Zealand. You know, making sure that communities continue to support tourism. You know, it was our largest export. It is back to being our second largest export earner again. And actually, what is a really positive sign, I think, post-COVID, is we continue to survey New Zealanders. And in our most recent survey, 95% of New Zealanders say that tourism is good for New Zealand. So actually, and that has actually gone up. So there's a renewed, I think as a geographically isolated country, there's a renewed appreciation of travel and tourism, what it does connects us to the world. So that's important. But what we have done also is is make sure that we have clear signposts for visitors on what our expectations are. So we developed, as a private-public partnership, what's called the Tiaki Promise, together with tourism operators, the airline, ourselves, other parts of government. And it's steeped in Māori culture, indigenous culture and tradition about actually what are our expectations of visitors. So that is to keep visitors safe. You know, that is drive safely, leave no trace, take your rubbish, all of those things, which is actually important for keeping visitors safe, but equally important so that visitors know what our expectations are. And that's been quite a powerful tool. It's a mechanism we use through tourism operators, accommodation providers. You will see it visible at airports upon arrival. So you have multiple touch points as you go through the country. And that has been a really successful partnership that we continue to evolve to really do exactly that, set the expectation that we want.
I mean, the fact that you have this very strong indigenous community and tradition, in a sense, that helps, doesn't it? It helps drive home the sustainable aspects, but also the risk factors too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the Māori culture, you know, sustainability is ingrained in their culture. You know, we're catching up in that regard. So I think that allows us to tell a really deep, authentic New Zealand story that is relevant for New Zealanders, connects across New Zealanders. So that's been a really powerful mechanism for us to tell a good story about the destination, but really set those expectations.
Said, Oman, which we've heard a lot about, I've certainly heard a lot about this morning here. It is recognized as one of the safest destinations in the Middle East, but from a Western traveler's perspective, for example, I suspect many of them would say, hang on a minute, that's not too far from a conflict zone. Why? I'm not going to go there. How do you reassure tourists and travelers?
Thank you for your kind invitation and welcome our respected audience. First of all, thanks God for this safety blessing for all countries, include Oman, yani. And one of the key agenda of Oman government, beside state development, is to build substantial, peaceful and respected relationship with others. And this dimension, by the way, under dimension titled Oman is Friends of All. And this dimension has been reflected not on the foreign policy of Oman, but also in the education through educational curriculum and industry as well, including tourism and also in the international commitment. When we reflect this dimension in the tourism sector and travel and tourism sector in Oman, we're just talking about we have to build respectable, peaceful relationship with either with the international institution, international partners, tourists themselves, and service providers and airlines representative. So there is predetermined program has been designed in order to promote Oman as a safest destination. One of them is there is a joint market initiative with international trade partners. And this initiative, the top agenda of this initiative is just to highlight the outstanding safety record of Oman worldwide. The second initiative, the second part of this program is social media. We designed the campaign, social media campaign. It worked in two ways. The first way, the ministry itself, with other partners in Oman, they already take this into account while they promoting Oman. The second one, it's indirectly coming from tourists themselves, because all tourists who came to Oman, they are educated, they are polite, and they respect each other. And they share their positive experience in the social media, and most of them, they have they are influencer in the social media. The third part of this program is tourism offices representative around the world. We have here in Germany, we have here in UK, in France, in United States, in Asia, in Australia, in New Zealand. And those representatives, the key task of them to promote Oman not only as authentic tourism destination with the natural and cultural values, but also Oman is the safest destination for the tourists. I want also to add that also we have collaboration with the Oman embassies, worldwide embassies. So one of their ultimate goal is to promote Oman as a safe destination through supporting Omani Student Association. There are a number of Omani students who study abroad, here in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, in New Zealand, in the United States. So during the celebration of National Day, particularly on 18th of November, the one agenda of that celebration is promote Oman as a safe destination with the friendly culture of Omani and hospitable Omani culture. Thank you.
You remind me actually of, I don't know if you remember this, the Colombia, during the gang violence and the drug wars in Colombia, which I presume is still going on, but nonetheless, it's a beautiful country, and they had a marketing campaign, which you may remember the slogan of, which was, "The only danger is that you won't want to leave," which was very clever, wasn't it? It was a very smart thing, and I'm guessing that marketing and that kind of thing all adds to what you're talking about there. I just want to return to you, Keem. In terms of data collection and digitalization, how is that working and helping the issue of over-tourism?
That's a good question. As I said before, we are managing amount of transactions every year, and always in an anonymized and aggregated data, we are providing support to the tourist destinations to take better decisions for overcrowded tourism, but also for other cities that want to plan new campaigns or maybe developing new neighborhoods. I will provide you a couple of examples. Last year, we partnered with Prague City, okay? And they leverage our data to make a heat or a grid map of the city to better understand the behavior of the travelers in each of the zip codes or in each of the neighborhoods by nationality to understand the flows inside the city, and with that, taking better decisions and develop new attractions around the city. This year, we are doing the same with Madrid. Madrid wants to develop a couple of neighborhoods, which now are not touristic neighborhoods, and they have huge plans and huge funds to develop it. So they are using our data to define the strategy, to see which nationalities might be interested to the attraction of these neighborhoods, and we are partnering with them. And the last one, quite interesting, it's, for example, New York this summer decided to make the Fifth Avenue pedestrian zone. And we are using our data to really calculate the real impact of this kind of decisions. I mean, how is the economic impact of making 11 squares or 10 squares a pedestrian? And next year maybe will be 15 instead of 11, or will be 2 avenues, thanks to this data. So I think that, and we were talking about the tourism, and it's an industry that is doing really good and great things, but taking objective decisions based on data, I think that we still have to improve, use new metrics, use objective data to make sure that we take decisions, make projects, and measure the impact of our projects. And I'm sure all of us, we can do it better, but yet use data to implement continuous improvement methodologies, being agile, and change our strategies and our projects.
Okay. I mean, Jane, I know that in the course of your work, you have come across situations where particularly local communities are really badly affected sometimes by tourism. You've got an example, haven't you?
Yes, I have, and this is an example, I hope, which counters the previous example, which is where those risks are in conflict. I think this is an example where if you plan properly, if you use data and use proper planning, then those risks can be complementary to each other. And the example is a piece of work that we recently did in Pokhara in Nepal, which was a sustainable tourism action plan for the city, funded by the ADB, working in close collaboration with the Pokhara municipality. And this was a project that brought together the public-private sector and the local community, importantly. They were very much at the center of this project, which is why I want to highlight it. And this is about understanding risks relating to over-tourism, the risk of surpassing carrying capacity, and how to mitigate those risks through sensible and prioritized investments. That was the output of our study. So in tourism, in Pokhara rather, tourism has had, no question about it, a positive economic impact. But the associated urbanization has been quite catastrophic in terms of sending it into a downward spiral, particularly during COVID. And you mentioned before, Rajan, about the kind of three buckets of risk: the traveller, the local communities, and the local assets, by which I mean the kind of beautiful scenery, the clean air, the quiet. And it's impacted on all three of those buckets. So we set about doing a consultation with local stakeholders, and the output of that study, as I mentioned, was 5 groups of investment, which combined together into $100 million US worth of investment. And those investments were centered around improving infrastructure, protecting natural assets like the lake. For those of you who've been to Pokhara, that's at the center of the city. Tourism dispersal to reduce the pressure of tourists all going to the center of the city. Improving urban livability, not just for the tourists, but for the residents too. Improving the tourism experience for visitors, and that's including things like signposting out to more sustainable practices. And crucially, finding ways for local communities to maintain their sustainable living practices, because so many of them have moved to a cash-based system, working in the tourism sector, working in the restaurants, working in the nightclubs, working in MICE tourism that's very prevalent now in the region. So for Pokhara, the hope is that this targeted investment will reduce its over-reliance on tourism, enhance its resilience to future shocks, the next pandemic, because we all know there will be one. But I'd make the point that planning for sustainable behaviors and practices are the bedrock of tourism for any destination. By investing in the sustainability of your natural resources, your assets, your mobility, your infrastructure, and your governance, you're also looking after the safety and security of your visitors and, crucially, again, your local community.
Alistair mentioned climate change, obviously, as being an increasing factor. And we are seeing many destinations now experiencing extreme climate conditions. Oman, Saeed, has, anyway, very, very extreme temperatures in the summer. How do you advise travelers? Do you dissuade them from coming during the summer? How does this work?
Not only small part in the northern part of Oman has increased temperature during summer. However, there is tour program has been designed to meet the needs of some segment market. Some of the tourists, they like to experience Oman during increased temperature. One of them is like they want to collaborate with local community because that season is time for the date palm harvesting. But some tourists, they like to collaborate with the local community and how to harvest date palm or fresh dates. So they spend from morning to afternoon at the local farms just to experience this kind of the agricultural activities. But after noon, they spend in the top of the hills. They take them to by the trekking routes, by the local community. They take them to the top of the hills. They like camping, and they experience stargazing because that area is clean and away from any lighting disturbance.
Yep.
This is only the increase. But also there are many places in the northern part of Oman has pleasant weather, like Al-Jabal Al-Akhdar. So the Ministry of Tourism usually conduct cultural events or festivals. So I'm just returning to the statistic last August. We're just talking from July to August. The number of visitors to that place, despite it is in north part of Oman, it's reached to the 200,000 visitors. But in the same time, we have monsoon season, the southern part of Oman, also starting from May to September, which is attract tourists. So the ministry with its partners, they developed a spectacular program only to attract this kind of tourists, and mostly from GCC country. According to the statistic published by National Center for Statistical Information, the number of tourists to the Al-Kharif or southern part of Oman, which is witnessed the monsoon season, increased from 800,000 at the end of 2022 to nearly 1 million in the end last year. Wow. So I want just to conclude here that Oman is destination for whole year. It's not.
Understand. Yeah. Thank you. Now, listen, we haven't got much time, but I want to rattle through two extra points here. One is, there is this perhaps controversial point, René, which is, does it help in order to mitigate risk to reduce choice that tourists have available to them? Can you give an example, perhaps, of that?
Yeah, I think it's probably on the contrary. I think it's giving us, again, a signpost for visitors of what they're looking for. So we have a subsidiary organization called Qualmark, which is fundamentally a ratings agency, which started its life as a ratings, looking at the quality of the bed sheets and those sorts of things, but it has really evolved and now is much more about actually also enabling businesses to show their sustainability credentials. So signposting that easily for visitors. It's part of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council accreditation. So we're really encouraging businesses, tourism sector, to be part of that accreditation so that they can improve their offering, but also more clearly show that to visitors.
And I know also, Saeed, with hotels in Oman, if they're not following the right procedures, the index that you give them, the silver badge or whatever, you give them with hotels, if they're not being sustainable, you have a system, don't you?
Yes, now we are developing the executive law, the new executive law, and one of them is to achieve sustainability. Many of the hotels, apartment already they take further actions in this regard. One of them, most of them, they're supported by the treated sewage.
Yep.
Okay, and treated sewage, already they made a good connection with the company which is concerned about this kind of the services. And some of the hotels already, they develop environmental education program for their tourists and even for the school children during the summer. So there is efforts put forward by the hotel apartment and even tour operators.
Okay, thank you. And Alistair, I wanted to return to you, and we started with you. When it comes to insurance policies, how much are they now going to be reflecting the kind of new topics that you talked about, the climate change and so on? How much will your premiums be affected by that?
I think when we start to look at pricing and we look at segmented pricing, we're going to see some changes coming through in the industry. Typically in the past, travel insurance has been priced on destination of one of three areas: Europe, the Americas, and the rest of the world. And actually, we need to be looking in and leading the conversation to get that down to individual destination countries where we can see the risk factors, we can understand the claims experience, the claims exposure, and actually start to build that into our pricing model. So we're accurately pricing for the risk at an individual country level rather than spreading that risk across a vast
Hopefully, that will actually shape the way that travellers then will travel, because it'll influence them, won't they? And you, yeah, go on.
Yeah, yes, I mean, it will influence to a degree. It will influence to a degree. Travellers want to travel sustainably. 90% of travellers want to travel sustainably, but 74% say that it's the industry's job to make that sustainable. And that's what we all have to try and do, is find ways in which we can make that sustainable for them.
Okay. Am I allowed, Willie, to cheat and get one question or not? One question quick from the audience. And if you haven't got one, don't worry. Oh, there is one. Yes, a microphone will go to you very quickly. I only say this, Willie, because I promised. Or you stand up. Well, you can stand up anyway. Oh, I think somebody's jogging around really quick. Oh, she's gone. She's gone to look. Look at this. Perhaps, or you can use one of these if you want.
Do you have a Slido there by any chance? No.
Thank you. Thank you so much. In the name of the destination of Jerba, which is a small island on the continent of Africa, on the north of Africa, there are some destinations that cannot indict their perspective, which are respecting the SDGs on the tourism industry actors regarding safety and sustainability, because they are heavily dependent on the tour operators. What kind of solutions do you recommend for these destinations? It's an open question, so anyone can.
Yep. Anybody want to answer that? It's destination focused. You want to comment on that, anyone? Said?
Yes, I want just to give you example from Omani context. One village which is mentioned during the opening ceremony by the General Secretary of UNWTO, Misfat al-Abriyin, which is get the best village, best tourism village for 2022. This village totally managed by local community. And we're just talking about 30 years before, it was external intervention by tour operators. We brought the tour operators, external tour operators, and local community, and the government, and ministry as a regulator. We sit in one table, we discuss how to empower local community. Tour operators themselves, some of them, they take initiative. They try to involve local community. They start in the guiding, in the guiding programs. Then the government, Ministry of Heritage and Tourism, also try to encourage local community to renovate their traditional houses to be converted as heritage lodge. And then after that, local community have better understanding about tourism and how tourism generate income for them.
Thank you, Said. I'm going to have to just ask you to wrap up, sorry, because we're eating to the next panel. Okay, so hopefully we've outlined how risks are evolving, how the world is changing, as we all know, but how sustainability can fit into that picture. There's some lovely solutions we had there. Just finally wanted to thank Jacob Media's Resilience Council for bringing us all together here. And lastly, thank our wonderful panel. Thank you very much indeed.
Well done.